So we've actually calculated that there's probably anywhere between 600 million to a billion liters of milk dumped every year in Canada.
Perhaps even better known as the food professor.
We've had a shortage of baby formula for months in Canada. We have a plant now in Kingston, Ontario, and that plant is owned by China. That plant should have been Canadian.
This announcement yesterday, the government building 500,000 homes a year. You know, I chime in, make some comments on that because as a home builder,
How did you feel about that? I'm just curious.
Well, that's insanity. The entire residential construction industry in the country builds somewhere between 200 and 250,000 homes a year.
I personally have actually chatted with all current leaders running. Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh, Pierre Poilievre, Elizabeth May. I've all met them, chatted about policy.
Hello, everybody. I'm Ryan McNeil, and this is the Builder by Day podcast. Thanks very much for tuning in. Today, I have a special guest here with me, Mr. Sylvain Charlebois. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Very good job.
Pretty good, eh? Also known, perhaps even better known, as the food professor.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining me here today.
Thank you, Ryan.
Appreciate you having.
This is a really cozy studio you have.
Thanks very
I wish
much.
I had the same at home.
Yes. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Trying to make everybody feel at home.
A builder's dream.
You got it. You got it. So, Sylvain, perhaps maybe let's just start with, for anyone that's not familiar with who you are and what you're all about, maybe just give us a little lowdown on who is the food professor.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I've been at Dow for a decade now, and so I run a lab called the Agri-Food Analytics Lab. They've combined forces to create this lab, so computer science, management, and agriculture in Truro. And so what we do basically is that we release studies on food inflation, on the future of food, basically. So we forecast quite a bit. We're using AI, machine learning. We've been using AI and machine learning for well over 15 years now. Our flagship report is Canada's Food Price Report, which is actually, the market reaches over 700 million people around the world. So it's a really well-read document. It's our forecast for food prices over the next 12 months in Canada and beyond in the U.S. We work with some colleagues in the United States, University of Florida, Texas A&M, Purdue, Cornell, and every now and then we have projects with the private sector. I mean, some people come to us and say, listen, we have issues with food waste, we have issues with labels, we have issues with some policies with the government. So we work with government, all parties. I personally have actually chatted with all current leaders running right now. Mark Carney, Jagmeet Singh, Pierre Poilievre, Elizabeth May. So I've all met them, chatted about policy, and because it's complicated out there, so they always come to academics to get some support and advice. And so I'm always glad to help out.
Okay. You speak a lot. I noticed, I just, before our conversation the last couple of days, just scrolling through some of your social media posts, and there's a lot of dairy farmer talk in there. There's a lot of stuff, right? That seems to be certainly one of the high points.
Not overly popular in the Atlantic, for sure.
Sure, yeah. So what is the Coles notes around that? Like, what is the, I guess where I'm coming from that question is I'm a home builder and real estate developer. So as it pertains to the political side of it, if for lack of a better term, I will chime in from time to time. Like, for instance, this announcement yesterday, the government building 500,000 homes a year. I chime in, make some comments on that because as a home builder,
How did you feel about that? I'm just curious.
That's insanity.
I know.
That's insanity.
I know.
The entire residential construction industry in the country builds somewhere between 200 and 250,000 homes a year. So the federal government is going to build twice as many homes as the entire residential construction industry?
How is that physically possible? Than you can.
Right.
That's a builder.
Right. And then you start doing, and then now, I've seen other people chime in and making comments on, like, doing the math, right? 35 billion, 500,000, and they're doing the math. And then I've heard folks say, $70,000, you can't build a home for $70,000. And then I look at that and go, yeah, but no, you can't. But the devil's in the details here, right? What is it, these quote unquote homes? What really are we talking about?
Yeah,
here,
exactly.
Right? So
I'm equally as concerned. Absolutely, of course. And this election really, I think, is an opportunity for Canadians to engage and understand what's at stake. Different parties have different things to offer, but right now, I think we're going in a very concerning direction, as far as I'm concerned. And yesterday's announcement certainly is an example of that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, when it comes to anything, whether it's housing, agriculture, whatever it is, whatever the topic is, personally, I always look to hear from people in the industry or experts in the industry. Like rather, I want to take my advice or those 2 cents from the people who are in the industry. I want to see what they have to say about it.
Yeah.
Rather than, what, say, a politician might say, or even just some random person that, a celebrity, for instance, some celebrity chimes in on something. But what really do they know about dairy farmers or home construction or whatever it might be?
But the problem, Ryan, is that, like, in my world, the food industry, not a whole lot of people actually are willing or are comfortable to speak out. And the dairy situation is a good example of that. No one wants to talk, okay? I was in London, Ontario last week, meeting with some pork producers. Very upset with the federal government right now because of tariffs coming out of China. And I got a phone call. A couple of producers knew that I was in town. They wanted to meet me on the other side of town. They didn't want to be seen with me in public because they wanted to talk about some problems that they are experiencing due to this overcapitalized sector called the dairy sector. Most Canadians don't understand what's going on, and in the Atlantic in particular, I know in the Atlantic it's a very sensitive issue, and Nova Scotia dairy farmers have actually shut me out at all events. If they actually sponsor, I am not invited. I'm excluded because of my views on supply management. And I know you've chatted with Maxime Bernier recently.
Yes.
He actually has advocated for the abolishment of the system outright. And both him and I, we've actually chatted about that. And I don't think it's actually the right approach, to be honest, because I don't think that Canadians will want to only drink and eat American dairy products, because our sector is incredibly uncompetitive. It's just, it would collapse. If you actually get rid of the quota system, you would see the entire sector disappear. And to be clear, the supply management operates under a couple of pillars. One, you have a quota system. So if you want to produce milk in Canada commercially, you need to own government-sanctioned quotas, okay? And these quotas are worth millions and millions of dollars, okay? So a farm in Nova Scotia would probably own about $2.5 million in quotas. That's just book value, okay? On top of the infrastructure. And of course, you have the Canadian Dairy Commission that sets a price, a fair price for dairy farmers, so they can actually make a good living. The problem with that formula is that it just inflates prices higher because farmers have no incentive to reduce prices as much as possible. The system doesn't work that way. Consumption is way off. There's no incentives to actually promote products, to innovate and things like that. So what we're seeing right now is a declining sector. In 1980 in Nova Scotia, we had 800 dairy farmers and 4 processing plants in the province. We're down to 1 processing plant, and we're down to about 125 dairy farmers. So when I talk to dairy farmers here, I ask them, what's the strategy? Like, are you just going to decline and ask for more money from Ottawa? And right now, Ottawa is giving billions of dollars in compensation for trade agreements, and they don't really lose money. But that sector is incredibly overcapitalized, which is really affecting farmland values, affecting other sectors that are trying to expand, like hogs, for example, beef, grains. All of these guys are really being impacted by this dairy sector that is really taking over and highly protected.
What's going on there? Why is it that there is this disparity or this unfairness or whatever you want to call it? And why were there 800 dairy farmers and now only 120? Like what's happening there?
Essentially, it's the lack of transparency.
Okay.
So you have farmers and you have boards. Okay. Farmers aren't the problem. boards are because they've become incredibly political. Okay, the Dairy Farmers of Canada hires thousands of people across the country to support the industry. They have 72 people on payroll. 72. Their sole job is to actually protect the reputation of the sector. That's all they do. So they'll actually send letters to me, lawyer letters to guys like me who will post something damning about the sector. They'll actually be on social media. They're misleading the public constantly about milk dumping, Buttergate, the use of palm oil when feeding cattle, making our butter harder at room temperature. All of these things are always being denied by the sector, by boards, only to protect the reputation. So what we have right now are many Canadians that are just not well informed about what's going on. So I'm out there trying to tell people this system is not working for us. We can do better. Maxime Bernier is kind of doing that, but the problem with Maxime Bernier is that he wants to abolish the whole system with no plan.
Okay.
Nobody's going to buy into that, except for maybe 2% of the population or 3%. What we need is supply management 2.0. We need to make dairy more competitive. Mm-hmm. And right now, and you'll understand as a business person, producing milk in Canada is double the cost that it is in the US. Double.
That doesn't surprise me.
No. So that's why if you actually get rid of the quota system tomorrow morning, we would lose all of our farms, all of them. Mm-hmm. The economics, I mean, they just don't make sense anymore, especially in 2025. To make things worse, baby formula, okay? We've had a shortage of baby formula for months in Canada. I don't know if you remember, it was a headline thing.
I do remember hearing something about that. Yep.
Did you know that we actually do not make baby formula in Canada?
I didn't know that, no.
Until September of 2024. We have a plant now in Kingston, Ontario, and that plant is owned by China.
Of course.
It's called Canada Royal Milk. They spent $300 million to build a plant in China. They process our own milk and they're selling it to Canadians. And my understanding is that they're planning to export baby formula to the US and China as well, transforming our own milk. That plant should have been Canadian. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of thing that people don't know about.
Sure.
And they say, well, what's wrong, Sylvain? What's wrong with you? I mean, dairy is great. I mean, it's awesome. What's the problem? Well, that's the problem.
Sure. That makes sense. So I've seen videos before of the milk. I've seen some of these milk dumping videos.
Yeah.
What is the truth there? Like, is there a universal truth? Like, for instance, what I mean by that is that all just smoke and mirrors or meant to be misleading? Or is that a thing? Well, I've seen them in the context of, oh, here's another dairy farmer forced to just dump milk out because they've reached their quota, for instance. Is that
so the modus
depiction?
operandi? So we've actually calculated that there's probably anywhere between 600 million to a billion liters of milk dumped every year in Canada. Okay, there's milk being dumped in the U.S. as well. Mm-hmm. The thing about supply management, we shouldn't be dumping anything ever.
Right.
So farmers are asked by boards to dump. They just deny it. They say, well, if someone actually goes viral with a video on YouTube, they'll say, well, this guy just mismanages herd. It's incompetent. He's incompetent.
Yeah, that's what I've seen.
That's the modus operandi of the boards. The boards will actually downplay, and chances are, if a farmer actually films himself dumping milk, that's the last time you'll ever see him.
Really?
Ever. Yeah, 2 years ago, there was one guy in Ontario who did it. Never saw him again.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reality is that...
You mean you never saw him in the...
Like in public?
Yeah,
Never saw him again.
Wow.
Yeah, boards are pretty powerful.
Wow. It's like the milk mafia.
Yeah, exactly.
The dairy mafia.
Exactly.
Wow.
So the reality is that cows, and I worked on dairy farms when I was a kid in Quebec. Cows produce milk. There's no tap on cows.
Right.
They produce two ingredients mainly, skim milk and butterfat. Okay. But demand out there will vary. Okay. Sometimes people will want more butterfats, and sometimes people will have skim milk. You'll always have a surplus of one or the other or both. Okay. Right now, the money is in butterfat.
Okay.
So if you want to make money as a producer, you produce butterfat. But what do you do with the skim milk? So that's why sometimes farmers are asked to dump, because they don't know what to do with it. My advice to the dairy farmer: come up with a plan. Set up a strategic reserve. Export. Do anything. In skim milk, you have sugar. You have all sorts of great ingredients you can do other things with. We're just dumping it because it's easy, because it's cheap, because it's hidden, because right now in Canada, all the valves to empty tanks are all inside. Cameras can actually film. In the US, it's not the same thing. So that's why whenever I post something on X, a truck dumping milk, there's always a dairy farmer say, oh, that's in the US. Of course it's in the US, because in Canada, it's all internal. It's inside the barn. You can't see it. So the issue has become incredibly political, and they're just trying to control the narrative. But more and more, what I'm feeling after 25 years, 25 years ago, when I was talking against the dairy, I got threats. Like,
yeah.
Halifax police came to my house twice in the last 10 years because of emails, calls, I know where you live, sort of thing. And I knew it was the dairy farmers. So it's all reported. Campus police at Dal, they have a file this thick. Every time I get an email, especially at night when, someone is upset, seeing something. Anyways, but Ryan, the tone is changing.
Mm-hmm.
I feel more and more people are starting to wonder, is this the best model we can actually offer Canadians? Maybe there's a different way to do this.
Sure.
And that's what I've been trying to say for 25 years.
Yeah, there probably is a different way. There would be some comparisons there with much of what I've been screaming into the void about when it comes from a home builder's perspective, when it comes to not the same situation with respect to boards, but when it comes to bureaucracy. So there is the political narrative of we need more homes, and we do. We have a housing crisis, a shortage of certainly of affordable housing, and we need more of it. But the narrative you hear from the mainstream media, which really comes from the political base, is that we need more workers, we need more builders, we need more of all of those things to make it happen. But that's not accurate. In this province, we're going to build.
What is accurate?
The bureaucracy is what stands between us and building more homes. And the bureaucracy and taxation is what stands between us and building more affordable homes.
And when you say bureaucracy, because we hear that a lot, and what does that mean from a home builder's perspective?
I'm talking about specifically, I could sum it up, the amount of time and cost from the day that I submit whatever it is I'm applying for until the day I get approval, especially on the development side of things. Land development or community development, we're talking years from the time we put the nice, neat package together and pass it in to the powers that be at the municipality.
Wow.
Years before we get an approval to even start land development. And then maybe it's another year before you could start housing development. So it would not be, even on a piece of property that is zoned for the type of development you want to do, and you put everything together, you've met all the criterias and setbacks and bylaws and traffic studies and environmental studies and all of those things. You have it all neatly put together, and you hand that in to, especially here in HRN,
right,
years before you will ever see a concrete truck.
Is it worse here than elsewhere, or?
This municipality, is my understanding, is the worst in this province.
Wow.
If it gets worse than here, I can't even imagine what that looks like. Right?
Well, I've heard rumbling.
It's beyond.
I used to live in Guelph with my family, and then before that was in Saskatchewan, and Like, and even in Quebec, my home province, I always hear that bureaucracy is a problem. I just don't know. Like, sometimes I don't know exactly what that means, but I can tell you in the agri-food sector, manufacturing is anemic. So processing is a big deal. That's how you build an agri-food sector. But to get anything built is a nightmare anywhere in the country. Federally licensed, not just provincial license, but so you have to go through the CFIA, and it's a nightmare. So I can only imagine it's the same in your field, unfortunately.
It's crazy. And with the incredible demand for housing that we all acknowledge is in need, we're going to build fewer homes this year than we did last year.
What?
Yes. We're the builders are. I've been doing this for 20 years, and with all of the demand that we all know exists, and we're all told exists, at no point have I ever had more qualified and experienced tradespeople and suppliers contacting me looking for work. So we're all led to believe.
So it's not the working.
It's not that we don't have the manpower to do it. It's not that we don't have the resources to do it. Right now, we have the issue of the fact that developers and builders don't like uncertainty. Like, these are big ticket items. When we build houses and put developments in the ground, you're talking, for a house, you're talking many hundreds of thousands. For a development, you're talking millions of dollars. And builders and developers don't like uncertainty. We don't like not knowing where the market's going, where interest rates are going, what's going to happen with the economy. Right? We don't like that. That's
especially right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And I would say in all of my in my 20 years, I've never been less certain about what to do than we currently are. So, we're a custom home builder, so we take it as it comes, and then we go into communities and I'll buy some lots and we'll build some homes on spec, which is, that means you're building them. They're not sold when you start them. You start construction, and we refer to them as like inventory homes, right?
Right.
But what you're seeing is builders who would normally do some of that, whether they build half a dozen a year on spec or they build 24 a year on spec, everyone's building fewer than they normally would because nobody is comfortable speculating where it's going. And I hopefully a month from now on the other side of the election, I could almost see it if the election goes the right way, and I mean that no pun intended, but if it goes the way we in my industry, and I don't speak for my entire industry, but again, I've been doing this a long time, and I know a lot of people in the industry, and everybody who I talk with in this industry wants this election to go the same direction. We all, for the reasons that are being publicly announced every day.
Yeah.
Addressing the taxation portion of the homes, even the most recent announcement a few days ago about the capital gains. If that money is reinvested, you don't pay the capital gains. That makes a huge difference for folks that might want to move some property.
Absolutely.
Right? And so we're all hoping that things go that direction. And if they do, I could see almost immediately, like the next day, under a conservative majority government, I could imagine the next day, home builders applying for building permits immediately, just like that, overnight, bang. Okay, I have a way different feeling now about this. Let's get it going, boys. Right? Let's get these houses in the ground. I
don't have a hard time believing that. Yeah. No.
Now, if it goes the other way, Sylvain, I don't say this for dramatic effect, but I know at least a handful of people off the top of my head, if it goes the other way, they are going to pull the tent pegs and take their money and leave. Like, I know home builders that are...
To go where?
They'll go to the U.S.
U.S.?
Yeah, they'll go to the U.S. I mean, the U.S. is very business-friendly right now. Yeah. And it's not... it's very familiar territory. Like, I lived in the U.S. for 2 years as I went to university. I lived in Arizona.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
Yeah. That was many years ago now, but
yeah.
I've spent, a friend of mine owned a home in Florida for a number of years. We used to go down there and hang out, spend some time. And when you travel to the U.S., you just feel like it's just, you don't really have to make much of an adjustment, I guess, right? You go into the grocery stores or drug stores, it's all the same brands. It's all the same. You can get the same cold medication. You can get the same, a little bit of different in the grocery store perhaps, but for the most part, it feels like you're just on vacation.
I feel like a lot of Canadians, I'm actually going for a year to Texas A&M to teach and do research there. I'm looking forward to it, to be honest.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But this is the first time I'm actually saying it in public because I'm afraid of, if I write that on X or on social media, what's going to happen, right? Because there's so much noise, so much hatred around this one man.
Oh, it's crazy.
In the White House, I think all of our discussions around the U.S. is completely irrational right now.
I agree.
But I totally get it. Like in the agri-food sector, I would say that if the election goes in one direction, I would say that a lot of companies are looking at moving or at least buying or building in the U.S. a plant so they can actually service the two markets, which is true. And yes, the United States is a business friendly place, and Canada is. And you just look at the data. I mean, it is becoming a less friendly place for businesses, unfortunately. And I feel for I'm not surprised by what I'm hearing.
No.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. I mean, that's the last thing I want to see happen. But I say this to a lot of people, and like I feel like sometimes as somebody who is, I own a business. I built this business from the bottom up. I like many people who own a business, I started with nothing. I don't come from any money, and I don't come from the building real estate background. I learned this as I went.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. I went from,
So you weren't brought up in construction at all?
No, not at all. No, nobody.
So what got you into construction then?
I went to university. When I finished my business degree here at St. Mary's, throughout university, I was working as a golf teaching professional.
Okay.
And then when I graduated university, I said to my wife, okay, well, I guess I'll have to get like a grown-up job now, because as much as I love teaching golf lessons, you can't raise a family on that. There's not enough money there. And the guys I knew in the industry, some good friends that I made in that industry, when I was 20, 21 years old, they were 40 years old. And these guys the winter would come around and they'd have to go find something else to do for their winter because you can't teach golf lessons. And even at age 21, I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So my first grown-up job is I took a job as a copier salesman at Xerox in Dartmouth.
Okay, yeah. Very classic.
Yes, exactly. And, great sales training. It's like 6 weeks sales
Sales
training.
is the best business school in the world.
Absolutely. And Xerox has at the time, they had a very well-known sales training program.
It was textbook.
It was, yeah. And I remember when I went to that job, it was literally 40 hours a week for 6 weeks in a row, sales training. Classroom style training. And I learned a lot there. Not just copier training, just relationship building and how to talk to people and how to present.
Which is the most important part.
Yes, of course, for sure. But I was only there for 6 months, and my wife and I had bought our first home. And through that process, when it was new construction, and through that process, kind of raised an eyebrow. I started doing the math on the commissions that the real estate agent was making. And I said to my wife, you know how many photocopiers I have to sell to make that kind of money? So long story short, I went and got a real estate license. I was in the real estate biz for about a year.
As an agent?
As an agent.
Okay.
I still have a real estate license. I don't practice real estate in that sense. I don't work with other folks. I deal with my own stuff, but I don't represent other buyers or sellers. But I very quickly, when I was in the real estate business, I realized that what I really liked was new construction. What I really found interesting was new construction. So then when my wife and I moved, I built our house. And that was the first home that I had built, just contracted it and made it happen. And through the process, I was like, yeah, that was good. I like doing that. I'm going to do that. And I thought I would do it just as a bit of a hobby. I was a real estate agent. I figured, maybe I'll build a house each year and it just kind of supplements your income.
Money. Yeah.
But it quickly turned into my full-time gig. And a couple of years later, it had shifted. I was no longer doing any real estate stuff, and I was only building. So that's how it came to be. Nobody in my family was in the construction business or real estate business. And even all the way through university, even throughout my time spent in Arizona at golf school and my 4 years at St. Mary's in a business degree, I can honestly tell you at no point did real estate and or home construction ever cross my mind, ever. It wasn't until my wife and I bought our first home.
Yeah.
And my wife was a interior decorator by trade, so she went to interior decorating school. There was a time when she was out of school before me, so it was a time when
that's actually quite fitting.
Yeah, she was the breadwinner, and then I graduated from university the following year, and then we
actually it's the same story for me and my wife, because when I went to school to do my PhD, we were poor, so my wife was really the one bringing the money in. And so we started to have kids, and we had 4 kids, and but now I'm the guy bringing the dough. But
sure.
We have a company, and we actually you'll be happy to learn that we're real estate investors ourselves.
Excellent.
We actually bought, I think we have 6 condos now, and we're co-owners of a hotel in Quebec.
Oh yeah, great.
Yep,
good for you.
Yeah, with a restaurant.
I advocate for for those who can afford to be. I always advocate for some type of real estate investment. I mean, it's still...
Well, my wife's parents, they live in our condo in Quebec, and my son with his girlfriend lives in our condo in Halifax. And
okay.
I mean, I'm a big believer in real estate. And so I think, real estate is a big piece of our economy. Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't go well, it's hard to get the economy going.
Right.
And so I'm not an expert in real estate. I'm just an investor personally, but I was quite concerned. I am concerned about the plan that was laid out yesterday, because governments cannot do better than the private sector ever on anything.
No, that's insane. That's insane, especially for something that I don't have any problem. Like I've said to many people over the years that the home building residential construction industry is not the most sophisticated business to be in, right? So, I'm not an academic, but I was just a pretty smart guy growing up. I went to university on an academic scholarship. I was at one point, I was this close to going into the ROTP program in the military.
Really?
As an aerospace engineer, that's the program I was heading toward. I was that close, and I didn't do that. I turned that offer down. And it all worked out for the better. Right? I mean, it's how it goes. Things happen. If that had happened, I never would have met my wife and all those things.
Exactly. Right? Yeah.
And but it's not to go back to what I was saying. The residential home construction industry, those of us home builders in the industry, and I know pretty much everybody locally. I know every home builder and a lot of good people there. And we're competitors, but at the same time, we work together. Like it's not this banging heads competitiveness. That's not how we operate in this industry. But for the most part, residential home builders in this part of the world are just your regular middle-class people, right? It's not, even though they may be building tens of millions of dollars a year worth of homes, they're still just your regular pickup truck driving regular folk. It's not a super sophisticated industry, but it's not an industry that is, even though it's not highly sophisticated and is not full of intellects and academics, it's not an easy business. Right? It requires a different...
What's the hardest thing about home building?
Relationship management with your trades and suppliers.
With the trades, okay.
That and money management. Managing the money is everything, because we don't, despite what might be a misplaced, or despite what the public may think, residential home builders do not work on very big margins. We work on a pretty thin margin. I've said to many people over the years that in many cases, the real estate agent is making more money than the home builder by the time everything shakes down to that.
Really?
Yes. We don't work on big margins.
Wow.
So it doesn't take much when we build turnkey homes. So what that means is if I build a home for you today, we sign this contract, we're going to build a home for you on lot 1, whatever street, and it's $850,000. Well, that price is guaranteed to you. That's the price. In the 20 years I've been doing this, I've never ever handed anybody an invoice for $1 more than they signed on for. Now they can make changes and amendments, and that may change the price, but there have never been any surprises. Right? We don't operate that way.
But the change would come from them.
That's right.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that things didn't change on our end. We've had costs go up, or a supplier
especially
calls.
if you just said that earlier, that it takes years to plan. I mean,
That's
a
right.
lot of things can
and
happen.
it even takes essentially about a year to build a home. So imagine I sell you a home today. The price we signed today is the price you're paying 12 months from now.
Yeah.
Imagine what can happen in 12 months, but we guarantee that. And so there's always that level of risk, and prices only move one way. They only go up. Right? Nothing ever comes backwards. Labor, construction, none of that comes backwards. So
well, it's like at the grocery store. I mean, a lot of people thought that Galen Weston was evil because prices were going up, right? Do you remember?
Yes.
Like the Loblaw boycott and all that?
Yes.
It was the most ridiculous movement ever.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
Costs go up.
That's right.
That's how the economy works, people.
That's right.
Exactly. It's not magic. I mean, a lot of things go up in price and costs go up, and obviously prices will have to be adjusted. And people just kept on blaming one person. Mm-hmm. Bizarre.
Yeah, and you see a similar narrative when it comes to housing and the rental market. You'll see some folks will take to social media, and politicians especially. It drives me crazy when they do this, and they'll say things like, they'll refer to the greedy landlords, and they'll use that type of terminology. And it's, again, landlords in the residential rental industry, these folks are not working on enormous margins.
No.
Right? While $2,500 a month for a 2-bedroom apartment is expensive, I agree. But that person, that company may only be working on a $200 a month profit on that $2,500. So there's not $1,000 there for them. They're not gouging you. They're just, everything is more expensive. Property taxes go up and utilities go up, and all this keeps increasing.
Yeah.
And, landlords they're not, that's a business. They have a business to operate. If they can't produce a margin, the banks won't loan them any money.
Yeah.
There won't be any apartment building. So, it can be a bit of a vicious circle, but there's a common misconception that home builders make enormous money on each home that they build. What I can tell most people is, there may be the odd time where a home builder things go swimmingly well and they do pretty well on that and they make a pretty good margin on that build. But that same home builder next year could easily sell a home and lose money on it.
How many home builders are there in the HRM?
That's a good question. I mean, if I were to list them off, I'd probably come up with 10 or 12 sort of mainstream home builders, that those of us that have been around for, say, 10 plus years.
And what's different with your business compared to others? What's unique about your approach, your business?
Well, Stonewater Homes is a custom home builder. And what that means is, and I mean truly custom, whereby folks will come in and sit down and say, we'd like to build a home, but we don't know what that looks like yet. So we need you to extrapolate that from our brain.
So that's actually quite normal.
Put it on paper.
To walk into a builder's office and say, I want a new home, but I have no idea how.
That's probably the most common scenario for me.
Really?
Folks will walk in and say, it'll even be, we're not even sure where exactly we want this to be. Honest to God, we're not sure where exactly we want to be or what exactly we want to build, but can you extrapolate that? Can you pull that out of our brains and put it on paper somehow?
Right.
And so that's the first part of it. That's the first part of the exercise. The first couple of meetings could be us just trying to physically draw what's in their brain, but they don't even know what's in their brain.
Wow.
We got to work through the questions. How many bedrooms are we talking
from
about?
the time that someone walks into your office and say, I want a home, I don't know how it's going to look, to actually moving into the house, what's the time frame here?
That's a good question. That will depend mainly on how quickly those folks can move through the first part of it. And that means getting from there to the contract.
Right.
So once we get to the contract, for argument's sake, somewhere, let's say 10 to 12 months of construction. Could be less than that. We've had, last December, we closed 3 or 4 homes in the month of December, and every one of them was at least 2 months. One was 3 months ahead of schedule. So they were finished, in 8-9 months instead of 12 months. Now, if the home is finished early on our end, then it's early. If folks aren't ready, it's no problem. It's just there. We'll log it up, turn the heat down, and we'll see you next month. But that's much better than it being not ready.
Exactly. They won't complain.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the process, it depends on the level of customization. It depends on how much the folks know about what they want, and how much of that prying I need to do to figure out what that is. So if folks come in and say, hey, listen, Ryan, here's a plan we like, or it's very close to. Or oftentimes they may come in and say, we really like your such and such plan. So they'll refer to a home we've built before.
Right.
that's ideal scenario for us because then we have a jump off point. So we can say, okay, what do you like about this plan? What don't you like? What would we need to change? Oh, we need the garage to be 3 feet wider. We'd like to cover the back deck, whatever. So we make any of those changes. And I guess to answer your question about what's unique about my business versus perhaps some of my competitors is I personally draw the plans, design the homes that we build. So I should clarify that. I personally design the homes that we build, and then one of my staffers here in the office physically draws the plans into building plans. So I draw it out, and then he puts it into architectural drawings.
You develop the concept.
I develop the floor plan and design, and work with the customers to get what they want on paper.
And your typical are we talking seniors, boomers, millennials, couples?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say currently in the last couple of years, I'm going to say mostly middle-aged or Gen X and baby boomers. I'm mainly building for families. We used to build much more proportionally for first-time home buyers and young couples.
First-time home buyers.
Right. That's almost
building.
Yes, that almost never happens now.
Okay.
Because the price of new construction has been kind of pushed out of reach.
Yeah.
I'd love to build more homes for first-time home buyers, and we could. So back to what I was saying earlier on the bureaucracy getting in the way and so on. There's no shortage of land around.
Because all that bureaucracy costs you money.
Yes, and time, right? And there's no shortage of land available. I know myself, and many other builders would say the same thing. If we could get the permitting and bureaucracy out of the way, I could build homes and bring them to market, new homes for under $400,000. No problem. Wow. And that's unheard of right now in this market. That's unheard of. New construction probably starts more like in the 600,000-700,000 range and up. Mm-hmm. And there's a big gap between 400,000 and 600,000 for that first time home buyer. That many first time home buyers, 400,000 is attainable, is achievable, and 700,000 is a pipe dream right now. So I'd love to be able to bring more affordable housing to market, both in the for sale and for rent category, but very difficult to do, unfortunately.
Because I'm a foodie, I need to ask you a question about, kitchens.
Sure.
So
what
are some of the trends that you're seeing? Like people walking into your office, they're asking you to conceptualize a new home. What are you seeing with kitchens these days? What are people asking that they weren't asking, say, 5-10 years ago?
I don't know if in the last 5 or 10 years there's been a big change, but 10 years ago there was a big change. The biggest change when it comes to kitchens was probably about 10 years ago, and that is the addition of the pantry, the walk-in pantry. The walk-in pantry, the Costco room, we call them.
Oh, the Costco room.
Right. Let's say
Costco effect.
Yes,
basically.
the Costco effect. So let's say 2015 backward, very few walk-in pantries, proportionally speaking. Now, I would say that 90% of the homes that we build have a walk-in pantry.
Oh, wow.
Could be almost 100%.
Wow.
Right. So that's probably been the most significant change in the past 10 years, the most significant change in kitchens, because kitchens have been open concept for, 20,
and when you say like a
now,
walk-in pantry, like how big are we talking here?
It could be anything from large enough for a door to swing in and then a little bit of room. So that could be anything from the, 5x5, 6x6 space.
Right.
But we've done some that are rooms, 8 feet wide and 14 feet deep, and it's like a second kitchen.
Right.
And some walk-through pantries, you come in from the mudroom and you go in this door and you drop the groceries and you go out the other door and you're in the kitchen. So we've done some really cool pantries. But generally speaking, when it comes to kitchens, open concept, big islands, lots of workspace. Everybody likes a nice big island in the kitchen. But the pantries are a must. Okay, it would be very rare for me to, certainly on a spec home, to build something that's not pre-sold.
Right.
It would be rare that if I would build something that didn't have a pantry.
Oh,
because I know that 99% of people want it.
There's, you probably know this, but in Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, we've seen many high-rises, condos with no kitchen. No kitchen.
Wow.
So the concept is they'll have probably a microwave and maybe a small little fridge, but the concept is for people to actually have a bed a bathroom, and then they would actually go eat downstairs. They would have like restaurants.
So everybody's eating processed food.
Pretty much. Yeah. And
these
condos are like 500 square feet.
Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah.
And I became concerned about that because all of a sudden, wow, we're building condos without kitchens.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's a pretty significant thing when you think about it, right? That's an entire
kitchenless condos.
Kitchenless homes is
and the kitchen, and I'm sure, as you're developing these concepts, the kitchen is the heart of the home.
Absolutely.
That's where people hang out most of the time outside their
especially
bed.
here in the Maritimes, the kitchen parties. Like when I have my home for my family and close friends, my home tends to be the place that we all congregate. And we literally stand around the island looking at each other, right?
Exactly.
10 o'clock at night, we're having a glass of wine.
That's what we do at
12 people, we're all standing around the island. We're all standing up looking at each other in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Huge table there with lots of seating, a living room right behind us. We're all standing up in the kitchen.
And on Saturday night, I was actually at a friend's place, and that's exactly what we were doing. And you kind of want to just eat there.
Right.
You don't want to eat in the dining room. You just want to eat there and continue the conversation.
Yeah. So. Another reason why you see that would be another trend. Like say, if you look 10 years backward, you never see any more formal dining rooms. Right. So we used to build lots of plans. There would be a kitchen, maybe a little nook, and then there was this formal dining space.
Right.
Never anymore now. You never see that now. Huh. That's been replaced by the home office.
Home office.
So that room that used to be maybe on the front of the house and it was 10 by 12 and it was the dining room, that's now the home office.
You think that's what COVID did, you think? Or
well, COVID, this was already happening prior to COVID. I think it's more just of a shift of people. Well, first of all, less traditional family sit-down mealtime would be probably the main thing.
Right.
And then the fact that more and more people work from home. Right. So, but that was pre-COVID. But nowadays, it's like I say, out of 100 people, one might ask for a formal dining space, but 80 of them want a home office.
Right. Interprovincial trade barriers are certainly a big issue in the agri-food sector. It's a problem. Just look at what we can offer to the rest of Canada in Nova Scotia, wines, beer. It's always been a problem selling to Quebec and selling to other provinces. And there's been a lot of discussions about, eliminating all these barriers. Is that something that will actually help your business as a home builder?
Truthfully, I don't know. I really don't know how much
with trades in particular, yeah?
Trades, no.
Because you already have too many people.
Yeah, so when it comes to product and material and supplies, I don't really know what impact that would have because I don't honestly know how much that is affecting currently the prices that we see coming to us. I just truthfully don't know that. Right?
It's mostly related to transportation, I would say.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So I'm sure it would have some effect. I'm sure, like anything, the more free trade, the better it would be. I can't imagine a downside. But certainly when it comes to labor, it would have no effect. In our industry, the men and women doing the work on site, they're very local. They're here. So much, in fact, that even though we're here in, we're in Fall River, essentially the Halifax area, you can't get tradespeople to travel more than an hour from here. So for that reason, people will often contact us who are perhaps down the South Shore or, in the valley somewhere or on the other side of Stewiacke, whatever it might be, and inquiring about building a home. And I'd love to do that. And it's not that my staff or project managers can't travel that far. And it's not even that we can't get product delivered that distance, but the tradespeople won't travel that far. The plumbers, electricians, drywallers, they won't travel that far to do that job because there's enough work here that they don't have to, for starters. But it just becomes very inefficient if they have to drive an hour and a half.
Right.
And, things happen. And like I said, remember, the residential construction industry, it's not always the most sophisticated. So it wouldn't be uncommon for somebody to drive to a job site and realize that the other guy took the key in his pocket, so now they can't get in. And so for that reason, everybody wants to keep it relatively close. It's easier to manage.
We had a sunroom done on our house last summer with I would say a reputable builder in HRM. There were 5 people on site, 3 to 5 people. None of them were actually Canadian born. None of them.
None of them were what?
Canadian born.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
They 2 of them came from South Africa. One was Filipino, and I think the other two one was American, the other one was German.
Really?
Which I thought was interesting. And so I came out of the experience saying, well, there's we're missing people. Actually, there's a deficit in terms of the number of people, but you're saying, and I suspect like we're talking a sunroom, it's a very small project, but for new builds, are we talking about a different type of trade group or?
Yeah, generally speaking, there's generally the new construction.
If you're in trades, do you want to do like new builds or just renovations?
It depends. It depends, but you probably don't do both. So there would be those who, like for instance, I don't do any renovations.
Okay.
Not that I can't. On one hand, renovations are much simpler, right? They're much easier, smaller projects, shorter timeline.
Hard to get good people.
Yes, but then there's also the other factor when you're doing a renovation from a builder's perspective, that you're renovating a home that in most cases somebody's living in, and to me that's I'm not interested in going there. Right? I want it to be a job site. I don't want it to be somebody's home while we're physically working on it.
And you're disrupting someone's life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, and generally speaking, the tradespeople are would be in line with that. So you have your plumbers, electricians, drywallers, and so on that do new construction, and then those that do renovation work.
Right.
There's not a tremendous amount of crossover there, because even though it's the same, plumbing's plumbing and drywall's drywall, but not really, because in the new construction world, the tradespeople get used to that system of, they know who was there before them and who's after them and which builder they're working for, and they get to know, like the electricians get to know the plumbers and the HVAC guys, right? And the framers get to know the roofers that are coming in behind them. So you get to build a bit of this system, and this guy knows how to leave it for the next guy, and this guy knows how, so renovations is different. And in the renovation world, you tend to get more of the, jack of all trades type. You might get somebody who can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and lay flooring, and then, do some plumbing and also hang some drywall. So, not a lot of crossover. Like we don't very often ever run into a scenario where we have a tradesperson that's not available to us because they're in the middle of a big renovation, but they could be finishing a job for another builder.
Right.
Right. We're getting close on time for you, but before we go, I wanted to mention that I've seen you on social media. You've obviously, there's the food-based topics.
That's right.
But you're also a relatively vocal person when it comes to the political side of things, and that must be a challenge for you in your environment, given that you're not super lefty by any means when it comes to your opinion on things. But in the university world, the academic world, you wouldn't be surrounded by a lot of probably similar voices, I would think.
No, and I'm concerned about what's going on campuses, and it's not just Dal; it's everywhere like that. On Friday, one of my colleagues wrote an op-ed in the Globe and Mail endorsing Mark Carney, essentially.
Really?
It was broadly shared within the faculty. The dean basically sent out the op-ed. It would never happen if, let's say, I write an op-ed to endorse Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. It would never, ever happen. And I kind of accepted that. This is how it is on campuses. Because, as you know, the Liberals have actually flooded campuses with millions and millions of dollars. And so the last people who want the Liberals to be defeated are academics, mostly. And so and the Trudeau Foundation over the years, and the infiltration is pretty clear to me. And so my voice is certainly not silenced, but pushed away. So I'm not invited on panels. I'm not, because I'm seen as a fringe sort of person. Unfortunately, my biggest concerns are the students. Students aren't idiots. They know when they actually go into a classroom where the faculty stands. Because most faculties on the left side of the political spectrum think that everyone thinks the same as they do.
Right.
So they'll freely say certain things that will make probably a lot of kids uncomfortable. And right now, this election, I don't know about how you see things right now politically, but to me, it's pretty clear. It's the boomers against everyone else.
Yeah, I would agree.
The liberals are the party of the boomers.
Right.
And because the boomers really last 10 years, it's been wonderful for them.
Sure.
But
yeah,
if you talk
sure.
to millennials, if you talk to Gen Zs, it's been awful for them.
Right.
Awful.
Right.
And so they want change. And a lot of them are in classrooms right now. And they feel voiceless. But they are licensed. They're self-censoring. Whenever they submit an essay, whenever they submit something to their prof, they actually self-censor to make sure they get a good grade. Can you imagine?
That's
what's happening
good.
right now.
That's not good.
That's not good.
No.
And so academic freedom. So sometimes I get asked to be on panels and stuff, and I get asked about academic freedom. Oh, Sylvain, you're allowed to say whatever you want. Sure. Academic freedom is absolutely critical on campuses as long as you fit in.
Right. Right.
And I don't.
No. Well, for what it's worth, Sylvain, I appreciate when I see people like yourself who, in your own self-interest, would be probably better off to just go along with those around you. Certainly in promoting yourself and avoiding
I have a few
conflict.
bruises for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So for what it's worth, my hat's off to you for doing it, especially in the academic world and the university world, because you're really outnumbered there.
Pretty much, yeah. But I thank you very much for noticing. A lot of people don't know this, but it's hard. It's absolutely hard.
Sure
But I do congratulate you for doing what you're doing right now. I mean, it's great. I mean, I know a lot of business folks, especially in the agri-food sector, who are frustrated. They're running out of patience. They're thinking of leaving the country, but they're not saying anything. And so I'm happy that you're doing what you're doing to at least voice your concerns. It's Canada. We should all be allowed to do that.
Yeah, I know. I agree, and I appreciate that. And I feel like I've said so many times that my opinion in 1995 would have been like left of center. There's just been such a shift. But I'm a Canadian. I'm a Nova Scotian. I've been here my whole life, as were my parents and their parents and their parents, and as far back as I can track it. So it's important to me. I don't like the direction it's heading, and I don't want to be sitting here at some point and say, "Well, I told you so." I don't want to have that "I told you so" moment. It's not like I'm not trying to be right. I'm not trying to be correct. I'm just trying to, like yourself,
inform.
I'm just trying to inform people to the best of my abilities, and I'm not suggesting I have all the answers by any means, but I have a pretty high level of comprehension when it comes to things, and when it comes to housing and development and so on. Yes, I understand that world, and so when the opportunity presents itself, I'll throw my opinion in, my 2 cents there. But for me, it's more like it's more of a thing of just being willing to get my hands dirty and just engage in the conversation, whatever that conversation may be. And I don't do it to alienate anyone or try to piss anyone off or try to have the argument, but just sometimes you
I think what you're trying to do is to invite people to think beyond the rhetoric.
Right.
And, think for themselves.
Right. And in the past, in the past month or so, I had, a former NDP MLA here that I had a conversation with. And then Maxime.
And who was that?
Matt Wynot.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So I had Matt Wynot here for a conversation. And then yesterday I had Maxime Bernier here for a conversation. Now those two guys are at different ends of the spectrum politically. But I was still able to have a very good conversation with both of them. We didn't get up throwing chairs around and
Well, it's like, I had a one-on-one with Jackman Singh, and he's a great guy. I think he's I just don't agree with his policies,
right.
But because he wants to cap food prices and a windfall tax on grocers. All that stuff is, to me, really dangerous.
Yeah, I would imagine.
But whenever François-Philippe Champagne, I've actually worked with him as minister on food inflation as well, and he has his own views. I don't necessarily agree with him either, and I had a couple of chats with Pierre Poilievre. I personally think he's the smartest of all leaders, to be honest. He doesn't have the credentials that Mark Carney has, but I can tell you, I've had a chat with Mark Carney and I've had a chat with Pierre Poilievre. Pierre Poilievre is a smart guy.
Yeah, of course he is.
He's a pretty smart guy.
I don't think I don't know how anyone could not see that.
Yeah. And so, yes, he's a career politician, blah, 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 but he knows how to think.
Sure.
And we chatted for about an hour and a half just on supply management, because he basically said, Sylvain, without starting World War III with the dairy farmers, how can we actually change this? And so I kind of gave him a couple of pointers for him to think about. But he understands that there's just nothing that politicians can do. I mean, because it's political suicide to you spoke to Maxime Bernier. He paid a dear price for his stance on supply management.
Sure.
And Pierre Poilievre knows that.
Yeah, in my conversation with Maxime yesterday, I was quite pleased to have the opportunity to sit down and have a chat with him like that. And setting politics aside, I mean, he strikes me as a very genuine individual. He's passionate about what he's saying. I truly believe that he is genuinely, whatever he's saying, he's genuine about it. That's my impression of it. And that's how I would feel about everyone I've had on this show so far.
Wish that, my concern is that you see, what we're up against is that Canada is inherently a liberal country.
Right.
That's how it is, right?
That's
and
right.
Especially in times of crisis, people go to the center. They don't like to go either side. They go to the center, and that's why Mark Carney is up in the polls. Okay.
Right.
The right gets fragmented whenever the center gets stronger, and that's what we're seeing with the PPC. We saw that with the Reform Party. You're old enough to remember the Reform
Just
Party.
Barely. Admittedly, prior to 2015, I would vote, but I didn't pay much attention to it.
After the Mulroney years,
right,
the right just got fragmented.
Okay.
Reform Party, Bloc, and the Conservatives. And now Harper was able to unite the Reform Party with the Conservatives. The Bloc remained, but of course, with what happened with Harper, it created the Maxime Bernier's party.
Right.
And so I just wish that at some point Maxime Bernier would say, you know what, let's join the Conservatives to beat the center or to beat the Liberals, but I don't think that's going to happen.
We talked about that briefly yesterday,
Yeah.
and he lays it out as to why that won't happen. And
because he ran for the leadership of the party.
Yes, and I understand where he's coming from. I don't, but I know there would be,
because that 2-3% makes a big difference.
Yeah, and the sentiment that I left with Maxime yesterday when we talked is that, and I would consider myself somebody that is a conservative voter, but also recognizes that today's Conservative Party is not. There are things I would like them to be more pro-Canadian and more conservative, I guess, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
So I recognize that, but like many conservative voters right now, there are things where for many reasons I'd like to vote for the PPC candidate, but I feel like right now we just got to get the win, right? We just have to
clean things up.
Clean things up. Priority one is we just
so
have
Canada's
the
inherently a liberal country until it's time to clean things up, and that's when the Conservatives come in to clean things up. That's what happened with Harper.
Right.
That's what happened with Mulroney.
Right.
Same thing.
Right.
And I talk with Ben Mulroney all the time. Great guy. And that's basically how I see Canada. And we're at a point where we need to clean things up. Will Canadians recognize the moment? We'll know on April 28th.
Hopefully. Well, thanks very much for being here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Yeah. And we'll do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
Best of luck.
Best of luck to you.
Thanks. Take care.